Greetings on this second Sunday of Easter, which we also know as Divine Mercy Sunday. I want to show you a picture of the St. Thomas Basilica. It's located in Chennai, India, in southern India. I visited the Basilica when I worked in India in the 1980s. The church is built on the site where St. Thomas the Apostle is supposed to have been martyred, and his tomb is in the church. That same St. Thomas the Apostle is the central figure in the Gospel story today. On Easter Sunday, at night, the apostles were gathered together in a locked room for fear of the Jews and of the Roman authorities. They saw what had happened to Jesus, their Lord, their Master, their friend. They were afraid that the authorities would come back and do the same for them. But then Jesus came and stood in their midst and showed them his hands and his feet and his side. Thomas wasn't with them then, and when they told him what had happened, he made his famous statement, "Unless I put my finger in the marks in his hands and my hand into his side, I will not believe." And then we have the gospel story today. Again, the apostles were gathered in that same room, the door was locked again, and Jesus appeared again. And he went to Thomas and showed him his hands and his feet and his side. And Thomas said, "My Lord and my God." That was a real turning point for the disciples. They went out from there and they became fearless advocates, fearless preachers of the good news of Jesus to the known world at that time. And that's when tradition says Thomas went to India, arriving there in the year 52. What we see is that the apostles were changed. They became different as a group of followers of Jesus, and that gave them the strength and the courage to really be a strong foundation for the church that they were establishing. But that church constantly needs to be changed and to be reformed. Those apostles were sinful, weak, frightened men who really didn't understand the message of Jesus. But when they met him in that room, he gave them his Spirit, and they changed. One reason the church needed to keep changing throughout its history is that so many of the church leaders throughout that history have been like the apostles, weak, sinful, frightened men who really didn't understand the message of Jesus or who just refused to follow it. Instead, they sought power and fame and wealth, control. And so God sent reformers to the church, people like St. Francis of Assisi, St. Teresa of Avila, Pope John the 23rd. They helped the church to reform and to change. Another reason why the church has needed to change is because the world and society has changed also. For over 1,800 years, the church never condemned slavery. For 1,600 years, the church taught that if you took interest on a loan, it was a violation of God's law. But society and the world changed, and the church's understanding of what God wanted changed also. Now, in our own times, we see signs that the church needs to continue to change. We have experienced the tragedy of the sexual abuse of so many young people by some clergy and some religious leaders. Some of those problems were created or made worse by clericalism, not giving the laity a chance to be part of the church, and by patriarchy, a male domination of all the leadership of the church. Women have made many gains in acquiring positions of leadership in business, in politics, in education, and in so many areas. But they're still excluded from positions of authority and decision-making in the Catholic Church. Now, the coronavirus pandemic is making us look at things differently. The way we work or stay at home, the way we meet and greet people, the way we talk to them, the way we practice hygiene, even the way that we go shopping. Everything is different. And things are going to continue to be different even after this pandemic dies down. The old normal really didn't work, and we need a new normal. There's going to be a new normal in the church and in the world. And it's not something to be feared. We can't fear change in the church. For example, this might be the opportunity God is giving us to really look at, as we look at all of this whole context in the church and the world today, should we be giving a rightful place to women and help them to become leaders and decision makers in the church? And we need to look at other areas like liturgy. If you think back over the past couple weeks, when we couldn't gather for our usual weekend liturgies, usually what you saw is on television, there was one priest or bishop in an empty church, and all the people are just sitting at home watching. In Greek language, the word liturgy means the work of the people. What we've seen the last couple Sundays is not the work of the people, it was the work of a priest. And the people were excluded, basically. Maybe it's time to rethink. Could we have prayed in a much better way during these times when we can't gather? Today, we're celebrating Divine Mercy Sunday. We're all very much aware of God's mercy given to us as individuals. We are all beloved sons and daughters of a loving Father. But maybe we also need to think about God's mercy being offered to all of us as the people of God, to us as the church. We recognize that God offers His mercy to all of us, and maybe now through the experience of this pandemic, God is giving us another opportunity to change, to be different. As we move beyond the pandemic and its restrictions, we need to examine how we live, how we are people of God, how we are followers of Jesus. And maybe we can find better ways to do that. Maybe we can find better ways to live as the sons and daughters of a loving God, as the people of God. Maybe we can find ways to grow into a more loving family of brothers and sisters with God as our Father and as our Mother.